I'm back. Hey everyone, Joey here, aka Animus, and there's a good chance you already know this, seeing as it happened nearly 3 weeks ago now, but my new album, The Sundown Realm, is out now on Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and YouTube, and it's something I'm incredibly proud and excited to share with you, because it's been in the works for a very long time, and I thought, seeing as it's got a concept and a creative process you might be interested in, that I should make some sort of making of behind the scenes type video for it and just explain my thinking process and ideas behind the record. So if you're interested, I'd kind of rather that you listen to the record first and try to infer the concept and ideas rather than just have me explicitly say it to you, and then maybe you can watch this video afterwards, but I'm not forcing you to do anything, of course. So this is technically my second record after my first one 2 years ago called Insanity Fair, but I kind of like to see this as my debut because that album I was kind of just messing around and getting to grips with music composition and production, and my attitude towards making music has been very different this time. I feel like I'm properly taking it seriously now. I don't know what you think. So this is a kind of soundscapey album, somewhere in the realms of IDM and ambient music, but I wouldn't really put it into either of those, because it's kind of half beatless and half beat heavy. I tried to put quite a lot of dynamic range into it and variety. Like I said, there is a story and a concept behind this record. It's based around a common feeling of outsiderness or loneliness of a lot of people of about my age, feeling like you're weird, not like other people, or you're not going to find someone who truly emotionally connects with you. A feeling that, fortunately, ended for me pretty recently. Hi if you're watching this, and sorry if this came off as a cringy attempt at romanticness. Well, it is loosely inspired by my own life experiences. It's not like a deeply personal concept, it's more something that I thought a lot of people could relate to. And anyway, I tried to relate this to the idea of dreams and like utopia and places inside your head. And particularly dreams that you don't want to leave, like you wake up and go, I wish I could go back into that dream. Or even in particular lucid dreams, if something turns lucid and you know you have to leave a dream that you don't want to leave behind, that can be pretty heartbreaking. The album follows a protagonist, a kid of about my age, who falls asleep and enters a kind of foresty dream world and meets this strange otherworldly creature called Zeros, who he feels a strange connection to. That sounds really bizarre on paper, just please give me a chance. Enough of an overview, I'll get into the individual tracks. The album opens with Sleep/Entrance, quite a long intro piece I made, mostly just a recording I did that's supposed to just be like getting into bed, and then I had this sound slowly fade in. It was a sample from 2 Months Off by Underworld, love that track by the way. This little descending synth in there. I ran it through reverb and a plugin called Past Fabric to try and make it sound massive. And then I also had a recording of limpet shell chimes that I made after things I collected from the Isles of Scilly. So I just ran my finger down it and it goes... And then the album is a continuous mix, so that segues into the next track, A Moonlit Glade, which is actually the first track I made off the album and the one that kind of gave me the whole idea for the concept and just made me think of this world in my head. It's quite a simple track because my production has kind of developed since then. It developed throughout the album, but it's based off a sample from an Andrew Huang 4 Producers 1 sample video, which for some reason I can't find on the internet, but there was a guy playing this beautiful sounding piano tune, and I thought, why not I try and make something with it? So I made this kind of chilled out down-tempo piece. It's kind of inspired by BT's This Binary Universe, and particularly the track Dynamic Symmetry, which is also based off a piano loop and also has those funny jazzy hi-hats coming in towards the end. At the end of this track though, I put in a kind of crescendo of strings. I play the cello myself, so I played the lower notes and my dad played the higher notes on the violin. I'd say this was the most chilled out track on the record, because things get pretty weird and wacky later Like the next track, Whispers of the Wind / Zeros, which is kind of a straight ambient piece. I made this synth pad, I ran it through some funny effect that made it go wow, and make weird resonant noises. And then I put on top of that just tons of different sounds that I drenched in reverb, because I love using reverb on stuff. It sounds stupid, but I use these recordings from ASMR videos. And I slowed them down so that they were weird, low-pitched, and slightly creepy. ASMR videos can just sound really creepy if you do certain things for them. Take, for example, the track Terrors in My Head by deadmau5, that uses one brilliantly. And I also did like a harmonic wash on my cello and used synths to make little pew-pew noises. And then the whole thing kind of builds with a big synth arpeggio, and then get into like the final section of the track, which is the part called Zeros, where this creature called Zeros appears in front of the protagonist. I didn't have a very clear image of what Zeros would look like in my head. It's supposed to be a bit ambiguous, and not really a specific gender or anything, I imagined. I just imagined a being, like a spirit kind of thing. Yeah, I did a bit of voiceover work there. I ran Zeros's voice through the noise filter on my PO35, like a lack of human life to the voice. As I was saying earlier, the protagonist is supposed to feel a strange connection to Zeros. I don't imagine it all like romantic love or whatever, or friendship, just a kind of, a connection. He feels like they're the same person almost, like Zeros is just a mirrored image of him. Zeros then starts to lead the protagonist to an unknown place, and throughout the album they're just kind of passing through these strange sights in the forest. So like the next track, Trick of the Light, there's this, I imagine this kind of otherworldly, amorphous glow in the air that's dazzlingly beautiful, alien, and hypnotic. So I started off the track with all these sparkly effects that try and sound like glowing lights, and then gradually go into this section where I sing for the first time on the album. I'm not massively confident in my vocals, I just felt like this track needed some words in it more than anything. So the protagonist sees it like a piece of the moon that's fallen to the earth, like something from outer space, almost. Then I added in some big acoustic guitar chords that I put a ton of reverb on and stuff, and gradually made it go into the first real beat-heavy section on the album, where I put in a kind of carbon-based Lifeforms-inspired bass line and some big kick drums, and gradually builds with more hi-hats and stuff, and it's probably one of the loudest sections of the album, but I'm really pleased with this track. Next, there's Shooting Stars Reflecting in the Water, which has a very self-explanatory title. One that's more simple in its instrumentation, but it's one where I tried to put in an interesting time signature that wasn't 4/4, just to add a little bit more
spice to that.
I put it in 7/4 and played a kind of piano loop. And then I wanted some airy vocals to it, but I knew that I probably wouldn't be able to do them without doing some silly falsetto, so I called on my mum, who actually is a pretty good singer. She's been in like shows and stuff and had to sing there, so she's quite well trained. And she did some really nice vocals on this, and I'm quite pleased with how it sounds. I tried to make the whole thing quite ethereal, and then in the last section of the track I added in some big piano notes and cello playing again, and ended with a little drum outro. I played a djembe drum. It was quite difficult to do in 7/4. And the next track, The Lake of Plasma, is again self-explanatory. Just imagine this big sea of like weird zapping electricity, like those plasma balls that the protagonist steps into and kind of they're like floating on this sea of electricity. Probably some of the weirdest instruments on the album on this track. I used this jaw harp that I got from London. Unfortunately, it snapped recently, which is a pain. Oh yeah, along with another jaw harp-like thing that was made of wood that made a slightly deeper noise, which I did in the other ear. So they're basically something you put in your mouth, and you twang this thing and then move your mouth around to make kind of oingy sounds. It's like oing, 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 and you got one in either ear. And then I also used a recording of a tap running, which again I used my pocket operator to like switch around the speed and stuff, so it sort of goes and sounds like a sea of something. I also used another sample from the track The Working Hour by Tears for Fears. There's this big opening with like saxophone playing and a pad, and I turned that into a big droney thing and gradually had some drums put in. Oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to say, unfortunately I don't have an acoustic drum kit, so at the moment I'm using samples. I really hope to get an acoustic drum kit soon, that'd be awesome. But yeah, I've tried to stick to acoustic sounds as much as possible on this album to make it sound a bit nicer and more warm. And then I did like that effect where you have one vocal recorded in a singing voice and another whispered. I just repeated the words "wash it all away." And this is another one with a big kind of climax at the end. Haha, very funny word. Where I got a penny whistle out and just did some atonal mad noises on it. I was just blowing into it like and put that in the background. I think it's quite fun. There's probably the loudest section of the entire album as well, this end of this track. Then there's the Procession of the Shangri. I know I changed the track title, I just thought Shangri sounded better than Shangras as a plural. A Shangra is an imaginary creature I made. It's supposed to have like, it's supposed to be like a big beast with lots of long fur and lots of eyes and horns and stuff. And I had this idea that there'd be a ton of them like slowly moving through the forest in a big line. And the sounds they make, their weird echoing deep groans, are actually a recording of a blackbird I did, but I slowed down and pitched down so you can hear all of the individual notes and it sounds like something much bigger. And then I also got out a hunting horn, which I found in a charity shop for £2, and played that over the top. And the whole thing is set to this pad, which I put a bit reduction on to make it sound weird and shrill. I don't know how to describe it, just to see what you think. But this track is actually just kind of an intro to the next track, The Garden of Eternal Symmetry. Yes, I know, the titles are getting more and more pretentious. The idea for this is that there's a garden that kind of has 4 quarters, which all exactly mirror each other right down to the atom, and when you step into it you see yourself mirrored in all 4 of them. It's based around a line I did on a synth plugin called Verve, which is supposed to sound like deliberately like an old tape that's degraded and does random pitch bends and stuff. In short, it's Boards of Canada Simulator. I kind of imagined all these different embellishments I put flying around in the background as like the different ornaments of the garden, the different things growing around you. That's a feeling I tried to make. This is quite a long piece, one of the longest on the album. It's, I think, just under 7 minutes long. It's got a middle section where it just fades out and has piano playing and stuff. And then it all comes back towards the end. There's this sample from the film Cloverfield, like this weird squelchy noise the creature made, like, which I repeated. I don't know why I did that. That literally makes no sense in the concept, but screw it, it's my music, I can do what I want. Speaking of long tracks with pretentious titles, the next track, The Clock Inside the Great Oak, Forever Twilight, is 9 minutes long and supposed to be the kind of big climax of the entire album, if not the very final track. I imagined here that there'd be like a massive oak tree in the middle of the forest that has a clock inside of it that's like forever at midnight, and it controls the forest so it's always nighttime. So I put lots of different clock recordings into this which play different rhythms, and a sample from this Under Milk Wood, the Dylan Thomas poem thingy, recorded with Richard Burton, whose voice I just love. He's an amazing spoken word performer. Oh yeah, by the way, the idea is supposed to be that people go to the same place when they dream, just see it differently. So that whole thing about different sleepers does kind of make sense in the concept of the album. But that's not the most important thing. I just think the most important thing is the atmosphere that this recording creates. And I deliberately sampled it straight from the vinyl record so you get like a tiny bit of crackle. And then there's a line I played on my kalimba, which I also found in the same shop in London that I bought the jaw harp from. Makes these beautiful, warm, plinky noises. It's also called a thumb piano. It's a really folky kind of instrument, and I think it's really effective for making images in your mind of foresty places and folklore. I use the clock recordings as like hi-hats on this. And then it progresses towards the end. There's like a piano section where it all kind of fades out, and then there's a key change. And I made the whole thing kind of slowly build, and I brought the recording back, and then I made the whole thing build up to this big, impactful snare that comes in, and then it goes into this massive payoff. If you use that word beginning with a C one more time, you are going to hell. And then the whole thing ends with like a bit of a cello solo type thing. Cellos sound awesome with reverb, by the way. That's not technically the end of the album though. There are 2 more tracks, one full one and one sort of outro. The first, Lucidity, as you can tell, is about the protagonist suddenly realizing that he's in a dream, this whole utopian world he's been living in, and this being that he feels this unbelievably strong connection to is gonna have to leave it all behind and go back to a real world that's far more bleak and less beautiful. So yeah, I had to do vocals again. And for one of the first times I've ever recorded vocals on a track, I was very ambitious on this one. I made myself very exposed, so I hope the vocals sound good to you guys. I tried to make them not be like completely perfect and prioritize emotion over prettiness of how they sound. Not expecting this to be any kind of tearjerker, but I did try to make it quite a big come down after the high points of the previous track. Like quite a sad reflection on everything, based around a feeling quite a lot of people must relate to. Even if your dream doesn't turn lucid, at least everyone knows the feeling after the dream where you wish you could just go back into it. So yeah, this whole thing builds up with cello again. Yes, I did a lot of strings on this album. I just really loved the sound of the cello in general. There's also a pretty big high note that took a lot of takes to record. And the thing ends with just a complete silence in the vocal section. Oh god, I did not make this easy for myself. Before the muffled alarm clock comes in and then abruptly cuts into real life where it's loud and clear in the untitled outro, along with just the sounds of birdsong gradually fading out as the protagonist comes back into the real world. So sorry if that was a massive long-winded explanation, and sorry if I got really full of myself. Hopefully you found this quite interesting, and hopefully you enjoyed or will enjoy the album. I'm so pleased to have this thing finally finished. It took absolutely forever to make, and I just love making things and sharing them with you guys. Just the whole creative process and the feeling of having something like this finished is just the best. So on that note, shameless plug time, woohoo! I put it on Bandcamp as a Name Your Price record, which means you can download it for free, or you can also donate a price of your choosing. Obviously I'm not expecting to make a fortune on this, it's more like a passion project than something intended for monetary gain. But because of all the work I put into this, and the fact that I'd love to have some more equipment to use for my second album and make it even more diverse musically, you'd be an absolute legend if you donated something to this project. I'd be very, very, very grateful for that. And also, I might end up making some Sundown Realm CDs or Animus t-shirts if you were interested. But anyway, I guess it's time to wrap up this video before my self-promotion gets obnoxious. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks so much if you streamed the Sundown Realm or have donated to it. Thanks for all the support I've been receiving from you guys recently. I love you guys so much. And that's all from me today. See you next time. Animus out.